In this video, I'm going to share with you one of the biggest leaks of our deep energy reserves. The reserves of energy that we're going to use for achieving greater health, for vitality, and especially longevity. And if we're at all interested in personal development or spiritual cultivation, this information is incredibly pertinent, relevant, and important. So one of the biggest leaks is basically having our will hijacked and commandeered by dysfunctional, distorted, and seemingly demonic ego programming. Now that might sound kind of weird, might be a rather tall claim, but we're going to understand exactly what that means and see exactly how that makes sense as this goes along. Now when we're talking about deep reserves of energy, we're talking about deep stores of vitality in the body, which we can access at any moment in time, any present moment that we might find ourselves in. We're talking about and referring to the kidney energy or the Jing energy, which in Chinese medicine is really responsible for our overall sense of vitality and longevity. It's really the foundational energy which to a large degree determines the quality and quantity of our lifespan. Within the body, this energy is responsible for the vitality of the bones, the bone marrow, the hearing, the quality of our teeth, the quality of the hair on our head, as well as our sexual capabilities, our reproductive capabilities, our athletic power, our healing power, and the power of our immune system. So as you can see, this is pretty foundational stuff. And if we're at all interested in health or vitality or longevity, we need to pay attention to this. So we can see a little bit now and understand what kidney energy is, what the Jing energy is. It's a massive, it's a huge concept, which I've done plenty of other videos on. If you want to learn more about that, definitely just check out my channel. But now we have a basic understanding of what that is. Now let's understand, okay, what is the will and what does the will mean in this context? What we mean here is the will would be the sum total energy of our psyche, which has a natural direction towards the fulfillment and the realization of our individual destiny or individual unique purpose. Now, what is the connection between the kidney energy or the deep reserves of energy and the will? Basically, the connection is quite simple because the will is actually the psychological or the sort of psycho-spiritual component or manifestation of the kidney energy. And they both influence each other. Meaning if our kidney energy becomes low, our will starts to become low. If our will starts to get jacked up and really get driven and inspired, then all of a sudden our kidney energy starts to go up and get more strong and more vital. So they sort of have this interesting feedback loop where they both imply each other, they both dominate each other, they both control each other in this very beautiful, balanced way. So now we can see the connection between the kidney energy or that deep reserve of energy and our willpower, and we see what in this context the will actually means. So then, as I said before, one of the major leaks on our energy, one of the major things undermining our vitality, our longevity, and our overall quality of life is having this will energy hijacked by the programming or dysfunctional, distorted programming of the collective ego. We're going to understand what that means and how that plays out in just a second. But basically, to sum it up, what we can see is that when we have this programming, our will becomes directed towards battling ourselves. It becomes directed towards controlling ourselves or policing ourselves or being at war with inside of ourselves rather than being directed towards the fulfillment and the realization of our individual and unique destiny and purpose for being here. So now that we have a clear idea for what that means, how that plays out, let's get a little bit more into what it means to have this will hijacked by this distorted or dysfunctional programming. So now let's understand what we mean by having our will hijacked and how we leak that energy and how this plays out within our own lives. Now these ideas which we're going to see and understand truly and really have their roots in the vast majority of world religions and the vast majority of spiritual traditions. And they're really all contingent and based upon this idea of the original sin or the original guilt or the original stain. And from the foundational basis of religion and spirituality, it's then trickled down and permeated society, culture, relationships, and the way we just live our lives most of the time. So now, looking at these ideas that we have in our head and how it plays out, is from this original idea of the sin or guilt or stain, we internalize hundreds or even thousands of years of other people's guilt, blame, shame, and judgment, which causes us to really battle ourselves which causes us to police ourselves and really engage in this illusory idea of trying to control ourselves. Now, how does that play out? It plays out because we buy into all these ideas that we have a good side, we have a bad side, we have a pure side, we have an impure side, we have a spiritual side, we have an animalistic side, we have a higher self, we have a lower self. Really what this is all causing us to do is divide up ourselves and pit different parts of ourselves against each other and buy into the idea of separation and division, which is really not true and really doesn't play out in any sense of the word. And this goes further by saying, oh, well, our good side is our mental or spiritual side, and our bad side, our impure side, our evil side is our animal and physical nature, which usually leads to the idea that we need to develop one over the other. We need to develop and embody one at the expense of the other. And if that's all sounding a little bit weird, take in these ideas and then start to examine the vast majority of religions, examine the vast majority of spiritual traditions, and even the vast majority of health information that's put out, and see, okay, is it based on these original ideas? Is it contained and implicit within a whole manner of guilt, blame, shame, judgment, self-battling, self-policing, self-control, and really dividing myself up in all of these different ideas? Now, really to recap that and to summarize it, basically we learned earlier what the willpower is and its connection to that kidney, Jing, overall longevity, vitality, energy. And that energy naturally wants to go in the direction of the fulfillment of our individual purpose or unique destiny. Yet when all of this stuff comes along and hijacks that energy, instead of us doing that and following that natural direction, which naturally leads to greater health and vitality and happiness and pleasure and fun, we instead go in the other direction and have to beat ourselves up and police ourselves and control ourselves and blame ourselves and judge ourselves and feel guilty and feel shame and blame everyone else and feel ashamed of this and feel ashamed of that and just get caught up in all of this stuff. And that consumes not only our will energy, but also the vast majority of our mental and emotional energy and what we label as our spiritual energy. It just gets involved in this whole whirlwind or this whole tornado of just illusions and noise, which really doesn't ever lead to anywhere other than just false progress and, kind of yo-yoing back and forth all the time. So really that's what we mean when we're talking about and seeing all the connections between these different ideas and seeing how when our will becomes hijacked by these sort of dysfunctional, distorted, sort of demonic programs, that we then don't have that energy to direct to the things that we want, to the natural fulfillment of our individual and unique destiny and purpose. So that's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of heavy stuff, but it's definitely major food for thought. And just like you can only eat one bite of food at a time, you can only eat one meal at a time, you can only absorb a certain amount of nutrients at one given time, this is the same way. We're only going to be able to take in so much and digest and assimilate and process so much, and it's just going to take time and a process of integration. Because we're all starting at different places, we're all in different places on our paths. It's not about guilt, blame, shame, judgment, good or bad, right or wrong. It's just about becoming more aware, becoming more embodied, becoming more liberated and empowered in our own personal process of development, cultivation, and self-expression. So if you have any questions or comments, post them below, and I'll talk to you soon.